New this morning are showing you an image right there of the federal law enforcement presence outside of Union Station in Washington, D.C. National Guard troops and Humvees very clearly seen. The White House has said that a significantly higher number of National Guard's troops will be seen in the nation's capital today, and they will now be patrolling 24/7, not just having shifts at night. Tackling crime, which is what the president says he's doing here, tackling crime was a key campaign promise and message from Donald Trump. So how do Americans feel about it now as we head into this new chapter? Harry Enten is here. Where do things stand with how people feel about crime right now?
Yeah, I think that Democrats have to get it around their heads that Americans are far more hawkish on crime than they think that they are. What are we talking about? Trump's net approval handling crime. Where was he last year? He was way underwater at minus 13 points views of term number one. But look at where he is now. He's on the positive side of the ledger. He's on the positive side at plus 1 point. Americans view Trump far more favorably now on crime than they did a year ago. And while this polling doesn't take into account what's exactly happening in D.C. right now, it does take into account what happened in Los Angeles, what's happened earlier this year. And Americans, for the most part, actually view Trump favorably. Crime is one of Trump's best issues. It's one of the reasons why he wants to talk about crime, because it favors him.
It will be very interesting when you can see polling that has what's happening and rolling out right now settling in to see
if it moves
what the impact really is, because it's been a lot of messaging is what we've seen. Compare Trump to Biden in handling of crime, please.
Yeah, okay. I think this sort of gives the game away here because Donald Trump is like Air Jordan towering over Joe Biden when it comes to their handling of crime. Look, in 2024, look at where Biden's net approval was on crime. Way underwater there at minus 26 points. It was one of Biden's worst issues. Granted, pretty much every issue was one of Biden's worst issues. And again, look at where Donald Trump is. Way, way, way above Joe Biden. What is that? That's 27 points. So Americans vastly prefer Donald Trump's approach to crime than they did to Joe Biden's. And again, I think it gets back to the point that Americans are far more hawkish on crime than a lot of Democrats want to admit.
Americans writ large, but how does it break down by party?
Yeah, okay. So I think that this is, we're talking about Donald Trump here, right? So I think it's very important to note that this isn't just about Donald Trump. It's about Republicans versus Democrats, right? And that, of course, is a key question going into next year's midterm election. I think the party closest to your views on crime, look, in 2023, Republicans were favored by 13 points. Look at where they were in May of this year. Republicans were actually favored by 16 points. They actually gained ground on crime. They were maintaining their edge and actually added a little bit to it. So Republicans in the House, Republicans in the Senate, they absolutely want to be talking about crime. The more they feel that we're talking about crime, the better they feel that the electoral landscape is for them.
Okay. It's good to see you. Thank you.
Nice to see you, Kate.
Jessica.
And with us now is the former Republican governor of Minnesota, Tim Pawlenty, and executive committee chair for the New York State Democratic Party, Christine Quinn. Good morning to both of you, and thank you for being here with us. I want to start first with what Harry was just walking us through. Christine, we have the GOP plus 16 on the issue of who's closest to your views on crime. It's one of President Trump's strongest issues. And again, those numbers Harry just went through do not include polling with what's going on in D.C. right now. But as he noted, it does include what happened in Los Angeles, et cetera, the border. Do you think Democrats are misreading this situation?
Well, I think the question really is what President Trump is doing really about making D.C. or other places safer, or is it a political stunt? And what we Democrats need to do is show kind of the hypocrisy here. If he really wants to help make D.C. safer, why isn't he coordinating with the mayor before this announcement? Why isn't he getting Congress to pass the D.C. budget so they know the resources they have and increase the resources so they can hire more police officers? Why isn't he filling the judicial seats that are vacant that are necessary to prosecute crime in D.C.? No one wants to be soft on crime. If you don't feel safe, it's very hard to thrive and as Americans. But is this really about making D.C. safer, or is it just about attacking blue area mayors?
And Governor, I think that actually is an interesting question. What do you say to that?
Well, what I say to that is that this is an important issue, both substantively and politically. And for all the reasons Harry just outlined, this is a powerful issue for a reason. People are fed up with cities, particularly our major urban centers, being filled with homeless encampments, crime, graffiti, and other livability issues, and they've had it. And President Trump has tapped into that. And by the way, it's not like he just came up with this problem now. DC has been dysfunctional for big parts of its modern history, and no mayor, no city council has really made substantial progress. It's a mess, and I'm glad that he's actually taking bold treatment towards DC. They need a shock, and they're getting it.
Christine, New York's Governor Kathy Hochul, obviously a Democrat, she deployed hundreds of National Guard troops to the subway system last year and said that the crime there declined by 27% in the following year. Is that different than what the president's doing now?
You know, what the governor did was in coordination with the mayor of the city of New York. It was a partnership to try to address a crime category that was spiking. That's not what's happening here. But you know, if the president is really concerned about homelessness in Washington, D.C. and in the rest of urban America, and I share a deep concern about that, nobody, Republican, Democrats, nobody wants people living on the street or encampments in their neighborhood. But if there is really a concern about that, then he needs to change his budget, because his budget is full of not just cuts, slashes to programs that get homeless people off the street and get them into permanent housing. What will increase homelessness in Washington, D.C. and in New York and elsewhere is the budget that Trump has proposed and is now pending in Congress.
And Governor, as we're looking at video while you all are talking, we were just seeing one of the checkpoints in Washington, D.C. last night in a kind of a very busy corridor there on 14th Street, which is home to a lot of bars and restaurants and apartments and shopping, that sort of thing. And you see, it looks aggressive. Do you think, you know, there's been so many instances with President Trump where people have said, we agree with the idea of what you're doing. It's the implementation that we don't love. And when you look at this, it does look like an aggressive push. Do you think that they are at risk of that here?
Potentially, but again, people are so fed up with these issues. I think they're willing to tolerate, at least for a while, a little bit of perhaps overreach or aggressive behavior. And by the way, I lived in DC for 6 years. I'm a frequent visitor there, and they got problems. And as to your question, though, you know, does it look overly dramatic? Maybe initially, but when more business as usual, more of the same isn't working. And so something different has to be tried. There's been no administration, either federally or in the DC district, where they fundamentally have solved these problems for any length of time. So just saying a little more money for a little longer time isn't going to work. We have to try something different. I applaud the president for trying.
Christine, the president looks like he's poised to ask Congress to extend that federal control over D.C. beyond this 30 days. Democrats are obviously in the minority. What do they do here? How do they handle this?
You know, I think this really is at a moment where Democrats need to stand up, be united, and send a message to America that, yes, we want crime to go down, but we want it to be a real coordinated effort with localities, not this where things are just forced on a jurisdiction without even given the real support, like budget increases, like judicial appointments that would get crime, not just to stay down for one news cycle when you're trying to distract from other things, but would really stay down long term. The Democrats need to send that message clearly that, yes, we are against crime, but we're not for political stunts that are not really going to help our cities.
All right, Governor Tim Pawlenty and Christine Quinn, our thanks to both of you. Thanks for being here.